Yo everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video. And today we're going to have a special video. This video is going to be a different kind of video than what I usually put out. It is going to be a discussion video, and the topic of this discussion video is why I think Batman is the best fighter in the DC universe. But the video is different in the format on how I've done it. Instead of sitting here and standing and talking to you, instead of just talking to you straight on like this, I have done some editing. Oof, it's not something I'm known for. I've actually recently got a microphone which I'm going to be using for a future podcast, and I've been, twiddling around and working with it, and I think that I've done a good job at putting down some audio with some visuals to really kind of give you guys my thoughts and my bullet points on the subject of Bruce being the best DC fighter out there. So I will basically use this as a dry run to see how well the video did, and in addition to that, I would like to hear your feedbacks on how you like the new format. I am incredibly rusty at it. I have not learned the ins and outs of editing yet, so if there are mess-ups, please forgive me. Yeah. But, hey, with that said, a couple things before I go into the video. First and foremost, please follow on my social media, Instagram, Twitter. You have the TikToks, as well as any and all support you can give me on Patreon would be fantastic. Your boy's out of a job because of COVID. So, any and all support would be fantastic for my family, even if it's just $1. I am going to be updating the tier list for my Patreon probably next month or so. I just need to find time to sit down and do it. But please go over to Patreon. That'd be fantastic. And in the discussion, I would like you guys to put down your thoughts on Bruce being the best fighter. Do you agree with what I say? Do you disagree with what I say? So feedback, comments, everything is welcome. Please throw it down there. With that said, I'm going to go right into the video. Okay, before we get into this analyzation of Batman as the best fighter in the DC universe, as well as his top contenders for that spot, let's talk about a couple things. First and foremost, let's talk about continuity. Oh yes, that C word we all love to hate as comic book fans. See, continuity constantly changes, evolves, and grows with comic book characters. It is what is canon, or what counts towards a character's history. And DC Comics is a big offender, if not the worst offender, of constantly changing its continuity, with reboots, retcons, and revamps. But luckily, Batman is not as much of a victim of this as some other comic book characters. See, Batman retains a lot of his history, a lot of his skills and ability, and a lot of his stories from reboot to retcon and so on and so forth. And the stories that have been retconned out usually get reintroduced and updated. So when analyzing Batman, I'm not going to particularly pick out a Batman from the Golden Age, or Batman's skill from the Silver Age, or the New 52, or the Bronze Age, or anything like that. I'm going to be doing a blanketed Batman. I'm going to be focusing on him as a character itself. So, in saying that, a lot of the discussion I'm going to have when it comes down to the actual fights or character interactions he's had will be from the Bronze Age, so the 1970s and 80s, the quote-unquote modern era or post-crisis, which is going to be the mid-1980s to the early 2000s, the New 52, and the Rebirth era. Because again, all the history is still relatively intact for Batman, so there's no need in debating on which Batman I'm plucking the history from. So, with that said, let's get into the next big disclaimer. Let's talk about a couple characters that won't be in this discussion. Individuals like Wonder Woman, Deathstroke, Aquaman, so on and so forth. These are incredibly skilled hand-to-hand combatants or warriors in some way, shape, or form. However, they are enhanced in some way, shape, or form. Wonder Woman is a god or a demigod. She has enhanced speed, strength, and durability that just Batman can't match. Same with Aquaman, who has an Atlantean physiology, so he has enhanced durability, speed, and strength. Deathstroke is a super soldier. He is beyond peak capabilities of a normal human. Now, all these fighters, and these are just 3 examples I'm giving, are skilled fighters. I mean, Batman even admitted that Wonder Woman is possibly one of the best melee fighters in the world, or I believe he said she actually was. Whether that includes weapons or doesn't include weapons is a different story. But to have these guys go up against Batman is just not a fair estimate on how good of a fighter is. I could easily debate that Batman is a more skilled fighter than Deathstroke if they both had the same strength, speed, and ability. If Deathstroke lost all his powers, Batman would be a better fighter. But the best that Batman has ever done with Deathstroke really has been tied with him. Most of the times when they fight, Deathstroke tends to get the upper hand. Same debate can go on with Wonder Woman. If Wonder Woman didn't have all her weapons or her super speed or strength, would Batman be a better fighter than her? Well, yeah, it's very much possible. I mean, just take Superman. Take away Superman's strength and speed and all his powers. Yeah, he's still a skilled fighter. He was trained by a Wildcat, even Batman himself. But Batman to fight him, well, that's a completely different story. That's not to say I won't include some metahumans, because there are some metahumans that have powers that will not interfere with their ability to fight. And you'll see later in this video that individuals like Black Canary are incredibly skilled hand-to-hand combatants, but are also metahumans. The difference is Black Canary's canary cry is something that she can turn off, that she does not need to use to enhance her hand-to-hand combating. So, yeah, she could use it in a fight, but if she decided not to, it's all pure skill between her and the Bat, or her and any other opponent. And most of the time, she doesn't use her canary cry, so it kind of works out, right? So let's talk about how we're going to measure Batman when it comes down to this discussion. And I've listed 5 things that are going to attribute to why Batman is the world's greatest fighter. First is going to be his skill. Batman is one of the most skilled hand-to-hand combatants in the world, being listed as knowing 127 fighting styles of martial arts and just combat in general. Now, not only does he know these styles, but somehow, in his 30 to 40 years, he's mastered all these styles. So how feasible that is completely debatable. But it is fact that Batman has mastered 127 styles of martial arts and forms of fighting. We can also talk about how he's at peak physical conditioning. That means that on paper, without going into the metahuman range, Batman is as strong, fast, durable, flexible, and capable as any Olympian-level athlete, or as far as a human body physically can go without going into supernatural or science fiction, or basically going into the metahuman state. So I think that's very important to list, because it's also going to be a discussion we have when he fights certain individuals who, and I'll get into that later, but him being at peak physical strength for a male at his age, and we're going to assume for this discussion that Batman is, 30 to 40, it's going to be a huge game changer. Genius level intellect. Batman is of the top 3 most intelligent individuals in the world. This kind of goes into the next one, which is master strategist. These two allow Batman to, the longer a fight goes, the smarter Batman is, the more of a chance of him winning. Right? If the match is evenly matched, or if, even Batman's not as quite as effective in the beginning, the longer it goes, the better Batman will be in the end, because he can outthink of his opponent. He has the ability to find weaknesses, how to make new strategies to fight this opponent. That is going to be really key. And the last one is going to be feats. This is something I'm going to be bringing up quite a bit, and it's Batman's feats that he's had over the years. And it's kind of an unfair advantage he has over some of the combatants who don't see as much, but Batman's gone up against some ridiculous things, ridiculous amount of opponents, both powered and unpowered. So I think Batman being able to accomplish these feats should come into play. So when I discuss certain characters on how they have certain advantages, well, let's take into account that Batman's gone up against individuals like Bane, Superman, Flash, Aquaman, and yes, I know I wasn't talking to them about his opponents, but if you're able to catch Flash with a punch, which he has done, I bet Flash was under mind control from Poison Ivy, but he has done, I mean, that is in of itself an amazing feat. And the fact that he spars with Wonder Woman, he trains with her, and although she's holding back, like the fact that he trains with someone that is much higher on his pay grade, like much higher level of fighter in terms of strength and speed and reflexes, should be taken into account. Because I mean, when you go up against that caliber, it's important. Again, like I said, this is kind of unfair for certain people because they're not as prevalent. Batman's one of the most read comic book characters out there, but it needs to be taken into account. To ignore it would be a disservice to Batman, and really to be a disservice to almost every comic book character who's accomplished some ridiculous feats. So I'm going to talk about a couple characters real quickly that I just want to get out of the way, that while they're incredible fighters or skilled fighters, that they really don't come into discussion as top tier, best there is, really going up against the bat. And I'm going to do these real quickly, so it's not going to be in-depth analysis for these 4 characters, but it's worth mentioning them. First is, of course, Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul has mastered many forms of fighting, and he is a genius-level intellect, but the reason why I'm disqualifying him is because, well, every time him and Batman has fought, Batman has kicked his butt. And that's plain, flat, and simple. Black Canary is going to be another one I'm going to disqualify. Black Canary is a fantastic fighter, and she's had some really good masters out there like Wildcat and even Lady Shiva. But Black Canary also does not have as many styles of combat under her belt. Batman has a lot more fighting skill in that regards. That and Batman physically is stronger and, in theory, faster than Black Canary. So having the skill advantage, the speed advantage, and the strength advantage, I think at the end is going to give Batman the overall advantage. It's a shame because a fight between the two would be incredibly interesting. But I think too much credit is given to Black Canary's status as a fighter, which is why she has a superpower. It kind of balances out everything. It makes her such a top-tier hero. But yeah, I'm going to have to disqualify her from this discussion. It wouldn't be a discussion about how good of a fighter Batman is if we didn't bring up a couple of his proteges. And Jason Todd is one of the ones that come close to being in the discussion, however, not close enough. Jason's actually an incredibly skilled individual. One of the people out there that really has expanded himself much farther beyond Batman's training with the All-Cast and the League of Assassins. He's actually gone toe-to-toe with Cassandra Cain and beat her, and she's going to be on this list too. But the thing about Jason, the reason why he's not going to be in the big discussion is similar to Ra's al Ghul. Every time Bruce and him have had a tussle, whether it's a serious one or whether it's just them kind of venting on each other, Bruce always comes out on top, no matter what. And I think that just goes to attribute how much more skill Bruce has over Jason, despite, Jason having the youth, and I would even say Jason might have the speed advantage, but Batman still wins. So here's an interesting one too, is Sensei, who is actually the father to Ra's al Ghul, and quite possibly the greatest martial artist in terms of skill. He's a scary person to fight and has really been revered as that since his inception. However, he's going to be disqualified from this for 2 reasons. One is because when him and Batman fought, Batman did beat him. And I know one fight isn't enough to determine who's better, but the reason why Batman beat him is because Sensei has such a terrible endurance that if Batman can just last 2 minutes in a fight with him, it's a guaranteed victory. And that's the thing, right? It's finding a weakness and exploiting it, and that's what Bruce does best. So yeah, unfortunately, he's not going to be on the list. So let's talk a little bit about Dick Grayson. And I don't have as many clips to talk about Dick when fighting Bruce because they usually don't fight each other. Sometimes they sucker punch each other. That sounds really bad. But sometimes they get into small tussles. But nothing as serious as, say, Bruce fighting Jason Todd. But there's a couple reasons why Dick Grayson, while I do think he's one of the top tier fighters in the DC universe, doesn't cut close to Bruce. And first and foremost is Bruce trained him. Bruce knows everything Dick Grayson knows. Unlike Jason Todd, who went off and trained with the All-Cast and also trained with the League of Assassins, Dick really hasn't had much training outside of Bruce. I mean, the only thing that you can consider is maybe his training with Spiral. But I mean, even that is debatable because he kind of went right into field work. We don't know what time elapsed it was before he became a full-fledged agent. No, I think Bruce has a lot more skill than Dick, and he knows exactly what Dick knows. Even though I think Dick has the speed or the agility advantage on Bruce, being, this universe's greatest acrobat. I do think Bruce is a much stronger fighter physically, and he's also a tougher one. I think that there's not much that Dick can dish out on Bruce that he can't physically take and kind of push through and be able to eventually overwhelm Dick Grayson. Again, there's not much when it comes down to the two of them actually going all out. I'm sure there's a fight here and there that I might have missed, but for the most part, the two of them, Bruce beats him out every time. And Dick's an incredibly smart fighter. Let's not take anything away from Mr. Grayson here. He's gone up toe-to-toe. He has some great feats, too. He's gone up toe-to-toe against individuals like Deathstroke, the Terminator, and come out alive, which is amazing. But I think it ultimately comes down to what I said before, and is Bruce knows everything Dick knows, and more. And in addition to that, he's physically stronger and more capable and a better strategist. Dick is an incredibly smart person and smarter than Bruce in some ways, but Bruce is a better strategist, which goes to another thing. If you don't think Bruce doesn't have plans on how to defeat one of his sidekicks or family members, and this sounds terrible, but if you don't think he has contingency plans on Nightwing, Red Hood, Tim Drake, whatever he's calling himself now, Drake or Red Robin, Damian Wayne, Cassandra Cain, Signal, Catwoman, Batgirl. If you don't think he doesn't have contingency plans, especially like Batwoman, who's probably the most dangerous if she went rogue, then you're fooling yourself. Because he has contingency plans on the Justice League. Batman is, well, at one point was incredibly paranoid. He's still pretty paranoid, but he was incredibly paranoid of who he was working with and how dangerous and powerful these individuals were. So I know for a fact that if Bruce actually had to go toe-to-toe against the prodigal son, and honestly I think his best sidekick in terms of balance, then he would definitely have that contingency plan set up. But Dick definitely deserves this spot up here. He is one of the best fighters in the DCU. I put him ahead of all the other ones. And I didn't put Richard Dragon on this list because Richard Dragon is kind of in flux on what kind of character he is right now. New 52 versus pre-New 52. And really, Richard Dragon hasn't fought Batman to my recollection. There is 80 years worth of comics to go through, but I would say Dick Grayson is a much better fighter than Richard Dragon, who was at one time one of the best fighters in the DCU. So Dick Grayson definitely earns to be in the discussion and to be on this spot. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to him and his mentor, Batman's stronger, he's smarter, and he's more skilled. And at the end of the day, that's what counts, right? Okay, let's get a lot of people upset here. It's time to tick some people off. Cassandra Cain, often considered one of the best fighters in the DCU, not necessarily for her skill or her speed or her strength, but for her ability to read people's body language. Something that was a huge focus by her father, David Cain. Cassandra Cain, even by Batman's own admission, would probably beat him in a fight. However, I do believe Batman's a lot more modest of a fighter than, he displays. And I think when it comes down to it, he would beat Cassandra Cain more times than she would beat him. And I think he's just a better fighter for it. And I'll talk about her ability to kind of read body language in a little bit. But I think Batman would be able to beat her for a couple of reasons. One is Cassandra Cain is anywhere from 16 to 19 years old. Batman is a 30 to 40-year-old, right? Somewhere in between there, probably 38. Physically, at peak level for a female at that age and a peak level at a male at that age, the male is going to be faster, stronger, and more durable. Doesn't matter how quickly you can read someone's body language. If someone is faster than you, oh shit, you can only react so fast. I think Batman physically has that advantage. I think it also goes down to skill. Even though Cassandra Cain has been training since she was a wee little lass, Batman again has displayed time and time again that he has more skill than his proteges. There are a few people on this list that I'll talk about that would probably equal Batman in skill, and when we get to them, but Batman is going to have more skill than Cassandra Cain. And Cassandra Cain is still a child. She hasn't, she's not as smart as Batman. She doesn't have the feats. Like, let's just be straight. I think I said this earlier in the video if I didn't. But, like, Batman goes up against metahumans like Deathstroke and Aquaman, or let's just see even the time that he caught Flash with a punch. Like, Batman's gone up against feats that Cassandra Cain is dwarfed by. Going up against someone like Bane, it doesn't matter if you can read Bane's body language. Bane will beat your ass. So I think when it comes down to it, Batman's feats play a heavy thing in this. He's gone up against bigger, stronger threats than Cassandra Cain can dish out in terms of speed, reaction. I mean, I would even say Wonder Woman has quicker reaction than Cassandra Cain, and Batman would still tag her. But I think the biggest thing to attribute to the fact that Batman would beat her, despite her ability to read body language, actually isn't Batman himself, although I think he can do exactly what this individual has done. And I stated this before when I talked about him. Let's talk about real quickly, and that is our boy Jason Todd, the Red Hood. Yeah, see, Red Hood has actually gone up against Cassandra Cain a couple times, or not a couple times, once in Batman Robin Eternal, and he basically was able to beat Cassandra Cain for the simple reason that he's like, oh, you think that you can read body language? Well, I'll just throw out stuff there that you can't read. And that in itself messed with Cassandra Cain too much, and he was able to get the advantage. It actually, her biggest strength turned into one of her biggest crutches, and you can use it against her. And if Batman is better than Jason Todd, and in theory could do what Jason Todd can do, then I'm sure he already thought about this with Cassandra Cain. Time for a big one, and that's Lady Shiva. Lady Shiva is without a doubt one of the best fighters in the DCU, and one of the few people I would say is equal to Bruce in skill, although a bit different than Bruce, seeing she's an assassin. However, Lady Shiva and Bruce have a tumultuous back and forth when it comes down to the win-loss record, because neither of them have clear-cut wins over each other. And I'm going to go over most of the majority of their fights. It's almost like professional wrestling, right? In WrestleMania 16, Triple H won the WWE Championship match, but that's only because Vince McMahon interfered and hit The Rock over the head with a chair. It's kind of like how it is with Shiva and Batman. You can't really tell who is actually the true winner because there's always something that could be conditionally affecting the loser. And I'll go over that in the actual breakdowns of the fights, and I'll try to hit those up pretty quickly. But that's, again, not to deny how good Shiva is. Shiva is actually so good of a fighter. When Batman's back was broken, he went to Shiva to help him get back into fighting shape. That's how much he respects her and how good of a fighter she is. But then again, it also just comes down to a straightforward question: who's the better fighter? And can little me, Andrew, prove to you that it's Batman? Well, I like to think that I can. So I'm going to go through some of their fights. I've taken about 3 to 4 fights here, and I'm going to quickly go through them and really kind of break down them and see how they pan out for the two fighters. So I hope you guys are ready, because here we go. As far as I can tell, this is really the first fight between Shiva and Batman, and it's a relatively quick one, and it comes to a stalemate. It doesn't give enough time for them to really come to fruition and actually see who would have got the upper hand. But it's basically Shiva trying to prove to Batman how good of a fighter she is, because she sees him as one of the top dogs in martial arts. But again, I wanted to make note of this because, again, it's a stalemate. Okay, so this is the next big fight between the two, and this is in Death of the Family. Basically, Jason Todd thought Shiva could have been his mother, and she and Batman have a tussle. This fight starts off with Lady Shiva fighting Batman with a weapon while Batman fights unarmed. Right away, you can obviously see Shiva's going for an unfair advantage, which she's perfectly fine with. You gotta remember, she's a bad person. So she uses a nunchuck, which realistically is not a reliable weapon. in fighting, but it's still in the hands of Lady Shiva, probably deadly as hell. And Batman right away wants to get rid of that nunchuck because he knows it's going to be a difference maker in the fight. And there are a few instances where Shiva gets a couple hits off Batman that kind of makes him take the fight a little bit more seriously. But throughout the majority of the fight, the big thing that Batman is thinking is, I need to end this fight quickly. And I think at the end of the day, he's confident he would win in Shiva in the long run, in a long fight. But he just didn't have the time to humor her with this fight. Which brings us to the big contention of this match, and that's Jason Todd. Jason Todd promptly wakes up from his little cat nap he was having and proceeds to interfere in the fight and knock Shiva on her butt. This allows Batman to get a couple of decisive blows on Shiva and ultimately winning the fight. Which begs the question, who would have won in the end? Shiva came at Batman with a nunchuck in the beginning and fought unfairly with a weapon, but at the end of the day, Jason Todd interfered and knocked Shiva from behind. Could Batman have beat Shiva without Jason Todd? Yeah, it's possible, but we'll never know in this instant because, again, Jason Todd, like Vince McMahon, ran in and hit Shiva over the head. Okay, so here's a fun one. Lady Shiva versus Batman in the Superman-Batman Public Enemy story arc. This is where the government, a bunch of heroes, and a bunch of villains were hunting down Superman, and Batman just got caught in between. Now, Batman has a pretty straightforward fight with Shiva. There's a little back and forth, but the clear victory goes to Batman. However, there is a bit of contention between fans and even Batman himself, because during this fight and many other fights, a lot of the villains were being mind-controlled by Gorilla Grodd. And while we get a clear definition on some of the people that are being mind-controlled, we don't actually know if Shiva's being mind-controlled. So if she's not being mind-controlled, this is a huge definitive victory for Batman. However, if she is being mind-controlled by Gorilla Grodd, what does that mean? Well, does that mean that Gorilla Grodd is physically taking control of her body and he's the one that's fighting Batman with Shiva as his puppet? Or is Gorilla Grodd merely suggesting Shiva to go fight Batman and she's just obeying his whim? I believe it's the former rather than the latter, because Grodd's powers don't work as in that he controls people's minds to go do things. He literally takes over their body. Although I'm sure there's a bunch of different interpretations, but this is kind of a tough battle to measure because, again, Batman gets the definitive victory over Shiva, but we don't know exactly how definitive that victory is for the Dark Knight. I still want to put this as a check for him, but until we get Jeff Loeb come out and tell us, we don't know for sure. Now it's time for the most recent fight, and I wouldn't even say this is much of a fight as more of a confrontation. It's a couple of things to take away from this. First and foremost, Batman states to Shiva that they've fought before multiple times, and Batman has beaten her in the past. Which Shiva then responds that sometimes she plays the role of the winner, sometimes she plays the role of the loser, whatever suits her ultimate goals. And then Lady Shiva puts Batman in an armbar, and that is the confrontation. There's a couple things to pull away from this. Number one is that Batman clearly states that he's had definitive victories over Shiva. So at least in Batman's mind, he's done that. But I think the big thing that a lot of people put towards Shiva actually winning this confrontation is, number one, she says she plays the loser sometimes, and sometimes she plays the winner. I say this is bullshit. Tell me when she was pretending to be Grodd's puppet and that's her winning. I mean, it's Shiva just being a bitch in trying to psych out Batman. That's simple trash talking. I don't believe Shiva actually believes any of this. The second thing is the armbar. A lot of people will point out that Shiva put Batman in an armbar. Well, that's all well and good, but that was one move. A fight can go back and forth very easily. And, ready? Batman is a full-grown physical peak male at the weight of 190 pounds. Lady Shiva is a physical peak female, probably the same age range, at 120 at best? Batman has a distinct weight, strength advantage over Shiva. In any martial arts situation, when it comes down to that, Batman would be able to power out of that. I'm pretty sure if the fight had gone on longer than 2 seconds, Batman would have gotten out of the armbar and probably gone toe-to-toe with Shiva, and then we could have had a different result. Who knows? Again, this isn't me being sexist or anything. It's just simple scientific fact. that Batman has the weight advantage, he has the strength advantage, and he has the size advantage. That's the case. It's foolish to put him in an armbar. Would I put Brock Lesnar in an armbar? No, because what would happen? He would power out of it. So this is kind of an odd fight, and that's why I say it's a confrontation. But it goes back to, I think, what's important is that Shiva was just bullshitting in this. I mean, I'm sure the writer, James Tinian, I think it was, that was writing this, probably thought otherwise, but no, I think it was just Shiva bullshitting. So yeah. So as you can see, we're back at square one. They have no clear defined victories over each other, so really, who is the better fighter? Well, in terms of skill, I would say Shiva and Batman are about equal, although a bit different, right? I think they've had equal amount of training and ability to master styles and techniques, but Shiva is an assassin. Her skills are based off of the killing blow, to assassinate and kill individuals using poison and weapons, where Batman is more of a standard martial arts / brawler. He fights to defend himself, he fights to end the fight quickly, he does not go for the kill. So they have a different philosophy when it comes down to fighting. But if the skills are the same, then what gives Batman the advantage in my mind? Well, I've gone back to this before, but I'll go to it again. Batman physically is stronger than Shiva. He can probably take more punishment than she can on a standard level. And in addition to that, I would say he's equal or better in speed than her. But more importantly is Batman is just a smarter fighter. I think instinctually, Shiva is very much like her daughter in that she has the ability to read movements and to react. And that's all well and good in fights. But the longer the fight goes, it goes to Batman. He will find a way to get through to Shiva's defenses. He will be able to read her and find new ways to beat her. It's just one of the things that makes Batman such a great fighter, is his ability to adapt on the whim. The longer the fight goes, the better it is for the Dark Knight. I mean, he can beat most people in just a few seconds, but if you go a minute or more with him, good luck, you're done. So, while I still think it's very back and forth between Shiva and Batman, I think Batman takes the cake. And I'd even bring in feats in this. I mean, the fact that Batman trains with Wonder Woman or fights against someone like, I don't know, Deathstroke, that should be enough to put him over. But I did not bring feats up with her because Shiva's just, she has some pretty ridiculous feats as her own. So, at the end of the day, I still give this to Batman. Okay, let's talk about a big one, and that is Bronze Tiger. I know throughout a lot of my video I've been talking about peak strength, speed, and durability, one of the advantages Bruce has over many of his opponents. He doesn't have that over Bronze Tiger. I would say Bronze Tiger and Bruce are equal physically. They are both peak human condition. In addition to that, I would say Bronze Tiger is just as skilled as Bruce's base level. They have almost the equal amount of training. Another thing to point out is Bronze Tiger is as smart as Bruce is when it comes down to fighting. He is similar to Bruce, and the longer that you fight him, the more likely Bronze Tiger is going to win. So why would I put Bronze Tiger so high, especially higher than Shiva, who is, by many thinks, is the best fighter in the DC universe on paper? Well, there's a couple reasons, but I think the most important reason is that Bruce actually has a losing record against Bronze Tiger. I bet it is a WWE losing record where there might have been some outside interference, but Bronze Tiger actually has a distinct advantage over Bruce. They've had a couple fights, and I'm pulling up 3 here. The first fight is just straightforward Bronze Tiger knocking him out. The second fight is Bruce actually having the advantage, but someone interferes and poisons Bruce. And the last fight isn't really a fight, but more of a sparring match between the two of them. But the important thing to note is that Bronze Tiger actually has a winning record against Bruce. So it's going to take quite a bit for me to convince you that Bruce is the better fighter, but hey, let's go for it. I'm willing to give it a shot. That's why I put Bronze Tiger so high up, because he's kind of a harder character to debate that Bruce is better. But you know what? Here we go. So I'm going to pull up the first fight, and this is really, I believe this is from Tales of the Demon, if my memory recollects. And this fight is straightforward. Bronze Tiger just walks in like the boss he is, punches Bruce, kicks him in the face, and then that's it. It's done. It's literally Undertaker popping out of nowhere, chokeslam, done, over. Pretty definitive fight for Bronze Tiger. The second fight is a little bit different, though. As you can see, Bruce has a bit of a back and forth, and it's a little bit more evenly matched until Bruce decides to do a Hurricanrana. Again, wrestling. And in doing this Hurricanrana, he gets the advantage over Bronze Tiger. We never actually see how this fight could have ended because there is an interference, as you can see here. Poison Dart, boom, Bruce is taken out. But, I mean, it does end with Bruce at the advantage. So, really, what could have happened with this? We don't know. But this shows how equally matched they are. The next time we see the two of them tussle is in Tom King's run on Batman, the I Am Suicide, and the two just kind of have a little back and forth. But as you can see, towards the end of the panels, it's just more of a playful back and forth, and I don't think the two of them actually meant to fight each other full out. Bronze Tiger does get the upper hand in this, where he gets Bruce in a weird headlock, but yeah, that's kind of where that... So when it comes down to Bronze Tiger, it's kind of tough, but I think the big reason why Bruce is a better fighter is because he definitely has more victories under his belt against big hitters in the DC universe. And this kind of goes into his feats, but I mean, the fact that he's gone toe-to-toe with the best of the best, both metahuman and non-metahuman, and come out smelling like roses, I think he's grown as a fighter more than Bronze Tiger. Maybe in the beginning Bronze Tiger was a clear victor, like he was in their first fight, but Bruce has only got better. He's learned more, and he's become a better fighter. It's kind of like Goku and Vegeta. He just trains and gets better to what he needs to get better at. So yeah, let's move on. So the last one is Karate Kid, which is kind of an odd one to put on here because he's from the future, the Legion of Superheroes, which gets retconned regularly. But generally, Karate Kid knows every single fighting skill and ability out there. He's mastered every style of martial arts, and as you're going to see in the fight between him and Bruce, it is pretty much a draw. But the fact that Bruce is able to go toe-to-toe, which DC Comics definitively puts down as their best fighter, because that's the whole stick of Karate Kid. He is the best martial artist ever. And I guess that's the advantage of living in the future. The fact that Bruce is able to hold his own and draw to him, is a big advantage. As you can see here, the two kind of trade blows back and forth, and I might have the panels mixed up. But at the end of the day, Bruce kind of outsmarts Karate Kid. He cheats a little, right? He gets Black Lightning involved. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, it's Bruce's intellect and skill and strategy that wins. So I hope my video made a strong enough case for you on why Bruce is the best martial artist and hand-to-hand fighter in the DC universe. Now, I know there's a lot of cases that could be made for Bruce, but there's, a good amount of cases that could be made for any of his top-tier opponents. Bronze Tiger, Lady Shiva, Karate Kid, they're all incredibly skilled individuals. I know I left out Richard Dragon, but there's a good reason for that, and that's just because his character is currently in flux. But on the whole, at the end of the day, Bruce is just a smarter fighter than most, a more skilled fighter than most, a stronger fighter than most, and, well, that's the reason why he's the Dark Knight. That's why he's Batman. It's just because he finds a way to win. And that's important. That's part of the character. The part of the character is that he's the best at what he does. And not to steal Wolverine quote, but he is the best at what he does. He's, if it's being a detective, a scientist, or a martial artist, Bruce always puts in 100% and becomes the best at it.